co-sponsor, Representative Patmon, but also the faith community that's represented here today, and spend some time with us. One person that had planned to be here, had hoped to be here, that couldn't, representing the Jewish faith, is A.D. Matson. And for your sake, A.D. will be sending a written statement. I don't have it with me this morning to give to you, but it's forthcoming. Any questions?
What does this actually do? I understand the premise of it, but out in the world, if it were to be passed, what does it actually do in your opinion?
The real purpose of this particular legislation is to, I might back up, currently in the state of Ohio, strict scrutiny, as we have shared, compelling government interest, least restrictive means in order to get there, is currently being practiced. That particular standard has certainly been questioned and tested, and in some cases not used in other states. What our goal with this particular bill is to put in statute the strict scrutiny standard as we've shared here this morning.
Can you explain that in a more, can you elaborate on that? The strict scrutiny standard, explain exactly what it is and how it would.
Yeah, it really is best defined, and we'll drop the bill later this morning, and you'll have that. You'll obviously have access to the bill when we skip to the clerk's office. And it really is, strict scrutiny is defined in the bill with two very simple sentences. I wish I could give you the line number, but you'll find it. But it's really simple, and it further defines, it really is just repeating. Lines 40 and 41. This is, for your sake, this is this very simple 3-page bill. And had LSC been able to get rid of the last sentence on the last page, it only be 2. But lines 40 and 41 in the bill, I'll just make you quote them if you don't mind. 1, essential to further a compelling government interest. And 2, the least restrictive means of furthering that compelling government interest. That really defines the strict scrutiny standard. And that's what we are simply asking the courts to apply to religious-related cases. This bill will not reduce the number of cases in our courts in regards to religious freedoms, religious liberties. Don't expect that at all. We just expect and ask the court to continue, frankly, in this state, to do what they've been doing, and historically have been doing across the country until, frankly, late, to continue to apply that particular standard. Our feeling is that to not apply the strict scrutiny standard, the alternative to that is to find cases or adjudicate them in a way that the findings are religiously neutral. And religiously neutral does not lend itself to individuals' rights or freedom of religion. So, again, that's a broad definition. Please.
For instance, is it really in the government's interest to say Jesus in a manger is prison? It should be taken down. I would suggest not. And that under strict scrutiny, someone would have to prove that it is in the government's interest to do that. And we would hope that outcomes would be measured in a way that favors what our country is. That's a country that was founded in religion and has prospered in it. And I'm not talking about state religion. I'm talking about the practice, the free practice of all kinds of religions. And if you look at the trajectory of our country and the downward spiral that we're in, our participation in our institutions, religious-wise, are on the same kind of track. And I would suggest that if we turn that track the other way, we might have some different results.
There were 2 recent cases, one, and I forget where, but the portrait of Jesus that was removed from school, and then the freshwater case. Had this law been in effect, do you think either of those situations would have been changed?
Depends. When I say that is that I can never get into the mind of a judge. It's like guessing legislation outside. But you can't say that somebody would have to prove that it is in the compelling government interest to do this. And I would suggest that you would have a better opportunity to keeping Jesus up rather than taking him down.
questions?
Is there can you kind of give an idea of the scope of the problem? How much of a problem is this? Or is it very isolated cases that we hear about in the news? Or is there a daily occurrence of this in the state?
Well, in the state of Ohio, there's certainly been occurrences, so I don't want to discount that at all. The concern is more in when you look a little more on a larger scale across the country. There's been many cases that are religious that have been challenged. There's so many. There's many. They kind of fall into categories, at least in my simple way of thinking. The categories are prayer, whether that be in school or in this building, for example, in a public place as well. And then the second kind of category for me is simply expression of religion, whether that be wearing a necklace, a cross on your chest, which indeed, around your neck, which indeed has been challenged in California, to nativity scenes at Christmas time, zoning issues with churches have been challenged. The breadth of this particular issue is pretty strong when you look at all the states collectively. So really what we see this as kind of a preemptive attempt to simply, again, put in statute. Not overly concerned with the history, what the courts have done to this point here in our state, more concerned with what the courts have done in other states. But we really don't want to wait until there is an issue before introducing the bill.
Does anyone, the Affordable Health Care Act was mentioned, does anyone see this as impacting the Affordable Health Care Act? I mean, it's a federal law as opposed to a state law.
I actually, in my interpretation, would say no, it's a federal act which falls under Federal Religious Restoration Act. Falls under that, so I don't necessarily see that as an issue.